And we are live. I think we only have one guest so far, Dan O'Neill.
Hey, Dan.
I just sent it out on my Twitter. I don't know if you want to do that as well, if you haven't.
Cool. Yeah, I'll do that. Let's share it out. How's it going, Dan? Dan, you got a shout out on when I was on Claudia's Cabin Talk the other day. We both talked about you for a second because I remember when I first started my channel, you were like, you got to check out Claudia at Cabin Talk. So you got a shout out.
I confess, I actually never even heard of her. I mean, I heard the name, but I never actually ever watched her. Claudia at Cabin Talk, huh?
She's super smart. Yeah.
I mean, you have to check it out.
Oh, hello, Christian.
Okay, well, I guess we will get started then. Hello, everyone. My name is Wes from the Piper Report. I never actually give my name out, so you should be honored. And I'm here with Holly Seeliger from Zoon Politica. Hello, Holly.
Hey, Piper. It's true. He never gives out his name. I had to beg for his name at one point. I'm like, who are you? I'm like, are you
Piper,
really
that's
Piper?
such a weird name. Piper is such a weird name.
Yeah.
I guess, today we are going to talk about JFK documents, but mostly Uranium 1. Not really JFK documents, what's in the documents, because we haven't got the documents yet, but I'll get to that later. But I guess, Holly, do you want to start things off?
Yeah, so it's just the strange story. I've been trying to follow it this whole time, ever since the election. So it's been basically a year that this, dossier has been out floating around. And basically, I never actually read the dossier. I guess McCain was kind of involved with revealing it to the media or something like that. But now mainstream media, I've been trying to follow it today. CNN, Newsweek, all the major news media is starting to admit, oh, yeah, that was actually fake. BuzzFeed originally dropped it, which should have given everyone a clue as to how real or not real it is. But they're now saying, okay, yeah, it wasn't actually true. And in fact, it was partially financed by Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. So I'm pulling this from Newsweek, and they're basically having to admit that Fusion GPS was involved. And I believe Fusion GPS is a Democratic Party organization, and they've got some strange ties. So the whole main story about Russian collusion and Fusion GPS with this dossier about Trump trying to implicate that he's somehow racist or something. The whole story is starting to fall apart.
Go figure. Actually, I want to read something here. It's a short article, and it has to do with Mueller now investigating the Podesta group. And I know many people are actually excited over this. They're like, yeah, this is good. Mueller is investigating the Podesta group, so hopefully Podesta can be indicted and Hillary can be indicted from that. And I don't know. I kind of look at it from a different angle. I don't trust Mueller at all. I don't trust James Comey. I don't trust Robert Mueller. And I think that Mueller investigating, or rather opening up an investigation into the Podesta group, could be a smokescreen to actually protect Hillary Clinton. But we'll get into that in a sec here. I just want to read this. This is kind of an overview regarding the Podesta group in modern Ukraine. Now that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, has opened a federal investigation into Tony Podesta and his Washington lobbying firm, a probe that reportedly grew out of his investigation of ex-Trump campaign chairman Manafort's finances, both Podesta and the firm could face consequences for work they completed on behalf of a pro-Russia Ukrainian think tank from 2012 to 2014. The Podesta group filed a retroactive Foreign Agents Registration Act disclosure in April, acknowledging that its lobbying efforts on behalf of the European Center for Modern Ukraine could be interpreted as having principally benefited that country's government. The firm has maintained it had no reason to believe its work justified FARA disclosure at the time, but Mueller will likely be probing whether that was indeed the case, or whether they avoiding filling with FARA to keep details of the ECMU away from scrutiny. So the article goes on and on, but essentially what that means is that the Podesta Group was working with the Manaforts for the Ukrainian government, essentially, and they were supposed to fill out certain documentation, and they neglected to do so. So they could actually either be fined for that, or you could actually even get criminal proceedings. However, I don't think it's going to go that far. I don't trust Mueller at all, and him looking into Podesta's, in my mind, could be him trying to protect Hillary Clinton, just like James Comey did.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I don't trust Mueller at all. I mean, he goes way back with like covering all kinds of information, and I don't think he has the best interest of the American people at heart or justice.
Some people are mentioning about your doves talking to the mic.
I'm sorry.
I heard it too, so I should bring the cats over, maybe.
Yeah,
no, I probably might
bring them
kill
over
the
to my
doves.
place.
Yeah.
I know. I could try to cover them, but they're just, I don't know, they get excited when I have the light on.
I'm sure they heard Podesta and they're angry, so they're probably just chatting like Podesta needs to be in jail. And I mean, there's the whole notion about Podesta's being involved in, Pizzagate and blah, blah. But anyways, with this whole thing, like I said,
can you tell me about Fusion GPS at all? Do you know anything about those guys? I'm trying to remember how they're involved with all this.
No, I think they actually hired, I think his name was Christopher Steele. He was the one that did the dossier. I think they actually hired him, and I think they were involved with that. Other than that, I really don't know much. All I know is that regarding the whole, like you mentioned, John McCain, I think John McCain was responsible for leaking the dossier. And what's most relevant about this is that the only reason Robert Mueller is investigating the Trump administration and Trump associates is due to that dossier. That dossier gave the FBI the motive for the FISA warrant to spy on Trump Tower, and it led to the subsequent investigation into Trump associates by Robert Mueller. So if this dossier is proven to be false, which I think it leads that way, the whole investigation into Trump is irrelevant and it should be disbanded.
I just think the whole story is so dumb, like that dossier. Like, could they come up with a better story? It's just like, it's BuzzFeed. So Newsweek says the dossier, first published by BuzzFeed News in January, garnered widespread attention, in partially because of its salacious allegation. It claimed that a Russian FSB agency possessed a compromising video of Trump getting Russian prostitutes to urinate on a Moscow hotel room bed once slept on by Obama and his wife, Michelle. So I don't know, it just sounds like something like a 12-year-old would write,
If it's something that salacious, I mean, if there is actually a video of Trump doing these despicable things, I think it would have been leaked by now. I think the New York Times would have found the video somehow, would have leaked it, or would have reported on it. So all right now, it's just speculation to try to create this narrative that Donald Trump is a sick and twisted individual with a sick and twisted world perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They were just like, oh, he's sick and racist, and it's interesting. It like ties in Obama and the Russians and prostitutes and sexual perversion.
But what's actually interesting, apparently the DOJ, this happened today, it was reported on. They canceled a gag order. They lifted a gag order, which the DOJ says informant can speak to Congress on Uranium 1, Russia bribery case with Clinton links. And then here's this, I'll read a little bit of it. The DOJ said Wednesday night that it had lifted a gag order on a former FBI informant involved in a high-profile Russia bribery case, clearing the individual to speak to Congress about Moscow's Obama-era uranium deals in the U.S. market and other schemes. So I think this is good. I mean, this is good because hopefully now the informant, who may actually have some type of, I guess, evidence or information regarding this whole fiasco, hopefully he can actually speak to Congress and describe what he knows. And I think you're going to get a lot of pushback from the Democrats in Congress to try to prevent that, and even some of the establishment Republicans as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if there are many Republicans in Congress that knew about this or in some way complicit with this. I mean, in my mind, the Democrats in Congress and the Republicans in Congress are simpatico. They're one and the same.
Is this article from The Hill?
This one was Fox News. I do have a Hill one up there, actually.
I've got this story pulled up from The Hill. It says they're releasing a client from a non-disclosure agreement so that he can testify in Congress about his work uncovering the Russian nuclear bribery case and the efforts he witnessed in Moscow to gain influence with the Clintons in hope of winning favorable uranium decisions from the Obama administration. So that's pretty important.
Yeah. What I find really funny, which seems like most people in the media have forgotten about already, is the leaked video where Obama is talking to the Russian ambassador, and he's saying, during the election, I can't really do much, but after the election, I can be more sympathetic to Putin's requests. So basically, right there was an act of collusion, saying, as of right now, since I'm running for re-election, I'm going to have to portray myself as having a hard stance on Russian politics and Russian influence. But after the election, I will be more than willing to help out Putin wherever he sees fit. And I do find it interesting that nobody in the media, or nobody that not really supported Hillary, but I guess nobody in the media used that as the notion that, Obama and Putin are working side by side, working together, like they say with Trump, because Trump said Putin, is a smart guy. Oh, Trump and Putin must be lovers. They must be working together. Well, Obama admitted that he would work with Putin after election more in-depthly. So I think there's more collusion there than there is between Trump and Putin.
Garden Gnome's got a good little quote here. He says, "I have no love for Trump, but I hate dishonesty and media manipulation." I mean, so it's interesting that former President Jimmy Carter even came out and said, like, look, mainstream media is just going on a complete witch hunt of Trump. And even if you don't like him or didn't vote for him or anything like that, you can see that they've just gone off and just making up stories and, acting like kids. Basically, they accuse Trump or whoever, accusing everyone of stuff that they're doing.
And then for those people who, I guess, are not really aware with all of the ins and outs of the whole Uranium One deal, I'm going to just read something here, a quick summary. So this is from PolitiFact, which I'm no fan of PolitiFact because they lie by omission, which I won't get into. But anyways, they do a brief couple paragraphs to kind of describe what's going on. But after Trump won the presidency, the Uranium One story received relatively little attention, perhaps because Clinton is now a private citizen rather than serving as president. But that has changed in the wake of a report published in The Hill on October 17th. The article's key finding was that by the time CFI-US was weighing the deal, the FBI had been investigating whether Russia was trying to gain influence in the U.S. nuclear industry. The report said that the FBI has already gathered substantial evidence that Russian nuclear industry officials were engaged in bribery, kickbacks, extortion, and money laundering designed to grow Putin's atomic energy business in the U.S. The implication of the Hill article is that Clinton either did know or should have known about problems with the Russian bid for Uranium-1 before deciding whether to let it go forward. Clinton, the FBI, and the DOJ did not provide a comment on this story. And what also should be noted here that most people don't really, I guess, know about or really want to talk about is that during this whole time, Bill Clinton went to Russia and did a speech and received $500,000 from Russia for that speech. This was during the time that Russia was trying to get the U.S. to approve this deal. So, and it's funny because Hillary Clinton, as Sec State, she had to be one of the people to sign off on the Uranium-1 deal with Russia. And then all of a sudden her husband and she gets $500,000, and that could lead some to believe that that's incentive and motive to help Russia get what they want.
Yeah, so you're bringing up something. This happened in 2015. So, you know, all of us alternative news conspiracy theorists have been talking about this Uranium-1 deal, you know, for a long time. And, you know, we were blown off this entire time. So it's interesting that it's like now it's finally hitting the mainstream news. You know, you mentioned President Bill Clinton getting $500,000 for a speaking fee from a Russian bank. You know, that just, I mean, doesn't that smell like that makes absolutely no sense? Like, Bill's not that great of a speech giver, you know?
Yeah, he can't even speak half the time. He looks like he's literally dying. And I mean, I feel bad for the man because I don't want to wish death on anybody, but I mean, the man is essentially a rapist and he's this horrible person, and the Clintons, and it's just, yeah, it's fishy. It's fishy all the way around.
I don't know. I was kind of like scouring social media a little bit today to see if like any of these Democrats, all these like Hillary Clinton people and all of like, you know, the pussy hat wearing sort of Clinton liberals were, you know, if anyone had anything to say about any of this at all, about like the dossier and Clinton, Hillary Clinton came out and just basically blamed Republicans for everything. Like, she was making absolutely no sense at all today. And it's just, you know, people are silent. Like, people have just totally forgotten about Clinton now. I don't know if the Democrats are going to like throw them under the bus or just like pretend none of this happened after an entire year of going on about Russian collusion.
I think that is her go-to excuse for every single issue that is upon her. Someone even, I think a YouTuber, I forgot his name, but he even did like a montage of Hillary Clinton, every scandal she was ever involved in, she blamed it as from the Republicans. Republicans were creating an artificial maneuver to try to sabotage her. And she said the same thing while Bill Clinton was presidency. She said the alleged allegations into his sexual assault affairs were designed by Republicans to destroy her credibility and the credibility of her husband to remove him from office. So, I mean, everything to her is a Republican conspiracy. And the way I look at it is that if you are a good person, there is no way you should be involved in scandal after scandal after scandal and after more and more information, like regarding illicit activities, bribes, kickbacks, everything. It's too much stuff happening to her for her to be completely innocent in all of it.
I don't know like what Democrats are going to do. Are they going to continue to cover for her, or are they just going to like pretend like none of this ever happened over the past year? You know, I mean, but more and more people are like, oh, well, you know, Russia worked to, you know, push the election for Trump, you know, using $10,000 in Facebook ads or whatever, like their big revelation was. Well, it seems to make more sense that the Russian oligarchs would have supported Clinton or thought she was going to win. You know, I'm sure they probably thought she was going to be the next president. And it appears like they had some pretty good dealings when she was in the State Department, you know. So I don't know. I mean, if anything, if there was any sort of Russian collusion to affect our elections, which, obviously could very possibly have happened at all, I would think they would have gone for Clinton.
That was actually some of my arguments during the campaign. I mean, if Russia really wanted to get like a foot in the White House, or rather, if they were really responsible for hacking into her emails and they had her 30,000 emails, they would want Hillary Clinton as president, because then they could control her decisions. I mean, they could blackmail her, they could extort her. There's no reason for them to want Trump to win if they like. It seems like those on the left, or rather those in the media, pushing this that Russia and WikiLeaks are one and the same and Russia's working with Trump. It's like, well, if Russia is working with Trump, then Russia really can't be responsible for hacking Hillary, because they hacked Hillary Clinton. They got all that information. They're going to want Hillary Clinton as president so they could use that information to get what they want from the U.S.
That's a great point. All of our viewers are going off about audit the Fed right now.
Yeah, I saw that, and I don't know how many of you are subscribed to this channel, but I have done many videos on the Federal Reserve. I am no fan of the Federal Reserve. I mean, Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank, owned by banks, that pays dividends on its shares, owned only by banks. Way too much power. The founders never wanted it, yet the Federal Reserve was enacted in 1913 by Woodrow Wilson, and it destroys our sanctity as a sovereign country.
See, this is why Wes and I are friends, because he can just list off that right there. Shut up all the haters right there, 10 seconds right there. That's all you need to know. I think it's interesting. There's like a lot of like leftist liberal people and like women are trying to like find out about the Federal Reserve. Like if some of my viewers might know about Really Graceful. She makes like little documentary style like videos. She comes out like with a video every few weeks. And her most recent one was talking about basically the banks funding all the wars and the Jekyll Island history and the Federal Reserve, and connecting it, with gold, with gold backing of our currency, and how, China's seeking to back their currency with gold now. And I just feel like this information starting to creep out into, the mainstream circles. It's not just like a libertarian bro audit the Fed's talking point. Like, I'm excited to see it starting to come forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what's really funny, I mean, the whole premise of the Federal Reserve was a surreptitious endeavor between Wall Street financiers working with Nelson Aldrich, who was a senator during the time. And they met at Jekyll Island in Georgia, and they created this cartel to control the U.S.'s economic modality, its economic systems and principles. And it's funny because there was one guy, Frank Vanderlip, who was actually in the meeting. He did some letters he sent out in later in his life, and he said, if the American people knew what they knew today about the Federal Reserve, there was no way the Federal Reserve would have ever became law. And it's so true, because the Federal Reserve is a nefarious branch that most people think is part of the federal government. It's not. It's not. The federal government has no control over its stock, has no control over its employees. The Federal Reserve has so much power that we need to get rid of. And I mean, it's good to audit the Fed, because if we audit the Fed, we will see that the Federal Reserve is monetizing foreign debt from countries that we have no business even helping. But I think we actually have to end the Fed. Auditing the Fed will only lead to a catalyst to end the Fed, but we can't have the Federal Reserve anymore.
Yeah, great points, Piper. And yeah, our founding fathers never wanted any of that. Arguably, that's why we had the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. A lot of people forget about the War of 1812 and what that was about, how the banks kept trying to come back into our country, and we're like, no, get out of here. And I think people forget that the American patriots, the people who fought the Revolutionary War, were actually fighting their own government. Like, they think of it as like a foreign government, but it was like 10% of people fighting their own government to try to get control over taxation and printing, control of their own money system. And I think, it's not just about the Federal Reserve. It's about the usury system as a whole. So the lending of money with credit and you know, collecting interest, the never-ending interest that people take in, and there just has to be limits to that. So, and I totally agree. Like auditing the Fed is just the step to ending the Fed.
Yeah, it's actually funny what most people don't really want to, I guess, or maybe most people don't realize is that one of the biggest reasons why the U.S., our founding fathers, abdicated from England was due to the English taxation system. I mean, there were other, you know, there's England, the crown was stepping on our rights and things of that nature, but it was their hatred toward the English taxation system that corporatists and plutocrats could essentially, not corporatists, plutocrats could essentially control any government they want. And that's what they were trying to get rid of. I mean, this all started with the Rothschilds, and it's just the history goes way back. And if anyone in the chat is wondering, a really good book to read on the Federal Reserve, really great book, is called The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. It's a long book, but it's awesome. It's great.
I gotta get around to reading that. Maybe I'll find an audio book or something.
That's what I have. I have audible.com, and it's that's where I get all my books on. It's nice.
All right, we went off on a tangent there, but that's fun.
We can go back.
Garden Gnome says that another good book to read on the Fed is Secrets of the Temple. So maybe I'll write that down too.
That one I haven't read. I read Creature on Jekyll Island, The Federal Reserve Conspiracy, I forgot the name, and then Fed Up. That one's a recent one, came out. That one describes the Wall Street collapse in 2008 and how the Fed was responsible with Lehman Brothers and blah, blah. But yeah, there's a lot of books on them, and it's funny how people can still try to defend the Fed, even though all of their surreptitious and nefarious activities are being exposed. Yet people want to still believe that the Fed is relevant and mandatory for a free society to function, and it's just not.
What do you think of the Glass-Steagall? Do you know anything about that?
So me being kind of, you know, small government, limited government, I do believe, though, that Wall Street banks do need regulations. I am one person that would rather impose regulations on the banks over anything else. I don't believe in really government regulations. I believe that everyone should have their own private property. But Glass-Steagall, if I remember correctly now, basically it puts more regulations on banks so they cannot do risky loans out, which was the catalyst that actually created the collapse, because banks wanted to make more money, so they would give these mortgages out to people who they know couldn't afford it, but they did it anyways just to get more money. Then eventually the bubble burst and everything went to hell. So I am in favor of actually regulating Wall Street to some degree. And I can't hear anything. Are you around? Oh. Did I lose Holly? Can you guys hear me?
I hear you now. It cut out for a second.
Okay.
You got some fans in the live chat there.
Yeah, about time. I only get like 2 people when I go live, so I thought maybe it'd be all for you. But hey, I got my 3 people here.
We got BB Hammer says, since living in Canada, I've understood better the break from Britain during the Revolutionary War. Been rewatching HBO's John Adams. I'll have to watch that. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, with Canada, they didn't completely break from the banks. Let's just say, you know, we had a more thorough revolution, at least for a while, anyway.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's so many things we should do. And the funny thing about the Federal Reserve, like I said, Frank Vanderlip, who was one of the members that created it, he even said that they had to pass it through Congress by tricking the senators that it was not a Wall Street funded bill. And that's exactly what it was. It gave all the power of our monetary system to Wall Street. And that's why it really kind of makes me curious on why the Democrats who are against like banks, none of them ever want to stand up to the Federal Reserve. It's always like people like Rand Paul, you know, Ron Paul, but I never see any Republicans, nor do I see any Democrats saying, hey, we have to audit the Fed and we have to get rid of the Fed. So they hate banks, but they don't hate the Federal Reserve, which is the king of banks, that is owned by banks and pays dividends on its shares owned only by banks. The hypocrisy is nuts.
Mike says we should never have given loans to people that couldn't afford them. That was on Barney Frank.
Yeah, there's actually the Big Short. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's pretty good. It has Christian Bale and I forgot that one guy who was on Evan Almighty and Saturday Night Live. God, I forgot his name, but yeah,
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell, yeah. It's a pretty good film. It's on you can watch it on Netflix, so it's good. Alrighty. Do you have anything else before we move on?
I think let's see what we got here. So we talked a little bit about the Russian bribery, Uranium one, and the famous dossier. All those stories starting to fall apart, and it's interesting that mainstream news is starting to report on that. I don't know. I think there's something weird going on with. I know our final topic this evening is going to be about the JFK records, so I'll let you jump in with that.
So, first off, I should ask you and those in the chat. I am upset that Trump's not releasing all the JFK documents. Before I go there, though, the article I read, it says President Trump blocks the full release of 30,000 JFK assassination documents. Now, is it 30,000? Is it only 3,000? I thought it was only 3,000. If that's the case, then he is blocking in 200 of them and not 28,000 or 29,800 of them. So can someone answer me that first? Is it 3,000 documents or 30,000 documents? Or do you know, Holly?
I thought it was 30,000 documents, but let me do a quick search here. 30,000 documents.
See, I find it interesting. And one person in the article, they mentioned this too, is that like those who are trying to get Trump to refrain from releasing these documents are saying, well, we need more time to redact certain information and names. It's like, you had 50 years to do this. Mm-hmm. Why do you all of a sudden need time now?
Okay, so it looks like 30,000 documents were set for release and 2,800 were released.
Yeah, see, that's just insane, and that it makes you mad. It makes you mad, and I'm going to read Trump's memo here for his reason why he did it. But basically, in his memo, he said he had no choice, and my argument to that is the same argument I made when people are trying to defend Bernie Sanders endorsing Hillary Clinton. They said he had no choice, and my response is there is always a choice. You always have a choice, and it makes me mad that Trump said he's going to do one thing and he's not doing it now. Just like Bernie Sanders, I was never really a fan of him, but him endorsing the antithesis of everything he claims to be against, saying he had no choice but to do so, it's hypocrisy at its finest. And I'm upset that Trump's not releasing all of them. I'm glad he's releasing 2,800 of them, but I think his intelligence agencies are trying to basically say, don't release this. You know, it could lead to our investigative techniques being exposed. And Trump, I believe he listens to his intelligence services and his generals more than anything. And if they told him not to do this, he's not going to do this, which I completely disagree with because I am for transparency. And I wish that he would release all 30,000.
So, yeah, I think, it's fascinating that I do think Roger Stone was right. You know, he claims to have told Trump that he should release these documents. And, so many Trump voters are pretty, savvy to the fact that the U.S. government is pretty well rigged in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people voted for Trump because they were like, I don't want a regular politician. I don't want Washington as usual. And I don't know. I think that, if Bill Clinton obviously signed that paperwork back in '92 after the JFK film came out, and there was like a renewed interest in getting the documents out there. And, I think probably, at the last moment, the people who have access to those documents were probably like, no, we can't release these because, my theory is that, there are people who were involved with the assassination of JFK who are still alive. And I think they want to wait until every last person is dead and gone so that there's no sort of justice at all that can be issued. That's just my thought, is that they're just waiting until everyone who's even remotely involved is gone, and this is more than 50 years later. So
I want to read something, and it's kind of long, so I apologize, but it's really important, and it exposes a lot regarding the JFK situation here. So there was a document made available to the public in the early 2000s, and it was dated March 3rd, 1964. In it, the CIA director, John McCone, sends a letter to the Secret Service director, James Rowley. And here's what it says. So I'm going to go over it here. Subject: Central Intelligence Report on the assassination of JFK. It says John Kennedy, but in response to the request made by your office on 24th February 1964, Lee Oswald's activities and assignments on behalf of this agency and FBI, there follows a narrative summary of the internal subversive activities of the Oswald subject. I recommend that unless the Commission makes a specific request for specific information contained herein, that this information not be volunteered. This agency has reason to assume that some junior Commission staff members may be potential sources of leaks to the news media or to other agencies. Due to the highly sensitive nature of the enclosed material, it would certainly be in the national interest to withhold it at this time, unless there is, of course, a specific request made. It is my understanding that Mr. Hoover has certain sensitive information within his agency, which has to be transferred to his own personal files for safekeeping. He concurs that no material should be voluntarily given to the Commission, he's talking about the Warren Commission, which might affect the status of field operatives or their safety. He is particularly concerned about the De Bruy Memorandum, which CIA has obtained and which I understand you have obtained. It is imperative that this information, at least for the time, remains under wraps. All right, I'm getting to the meat here. Oswald's subject was trained by this agency under cover of the Office of Naval Intelligence for Soviet assignments. During preliminary training in 1957, subject was active in aerial reconnaissance of mainland China and maintained a security clearance up to the confidential level. His military records during this period are open to your agency, and I have directed they be forwarded to the Commission. Subject received additional indoctrination at our own Camp Perry site from September 8th to October 17th, 1958. And participated in a few relatively minor assignments until arrangements were made for his entry into the Soviet Union in September 1959. While in the Soviet Union, he was on special assignment in the area of Minsk. It would not be advantageous at this time to divulge the specifics of that assignment. However, if you wish this information, it can be made available for your personal inspection within the confines of our own offices. Or I can send it to you by courier on the condition that it not leave the custody of the courier. So, I mean, it goes on and on, but basically I'll just kind of summarize it here. This letter that the CIA director sent to the Secret Service director explains that Lee Harvey Oswald has his security clearance for the CIA. He actually was employed by the CIA, not necessarily like working for them as an actual CIA employee, but basically like an agent for the CIA. And it's really interesting. I'll put the link in the description for everyone to read the whole thing. But now, whether this is actually true or not, I mean, whether this is authenticated, most people believe it is. And if it is true, then we know that Oswald worked for the CIA, and I think that's the definition of a conspiracy, because we know the CIA hated JFK because JFK was going to gut them. He was going to reduce the amount of people that work for the CIA. So it's pretty interesting.
I think there were a lot of reasons why JFK could have been off. You know, he did have a lot of enemies. You know, his famous speech about, you know, wanting to dissolve shadow governments. Anything that's, you know, in the shadow needs to be revealed. You know, his work with to diffuse the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, he had a lot of enemies that way. He was pushing against a lot of the plan, you know, to basically take over Cuba, and you know, lots of other plans with perhaps currency thoughts that he was having about. I had heard a rumor. I'm not 100% sure about this, but he did order the Treasury to print some money, and that's a rumor I had heard, or it was something in the works, and that obviously would have made him a bunch of enemies too. So he definitely, you know, there was a lot of reason for people to want to off him, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
you made a great point about Lee Harvey Oswald working for the CIA and his connections. You know, he was doing, you know, reconnaissance or whatever for to check on Russia, and had, you know, allied himself with communists at one point. And there's some sort of bizarre stories about him in New Orleans at certain points. And, you know, his former, you know, lovers and girlfriends said that, yeah, he was working for the deep state, you know, and there was all kinds of, you know, he was doing military work. And, you know, all of this has kind of been out there, but the fact is that if anyone admits that there was anyone involved other than the lone gunman, that equals a conspiracy. So as we know, a conspiracy is just two or more people trying to manipulate a situation. So that's why they always say everything's always a crazy gunman, one lone gunman. And so they have to go so far as to have like the magic bullet theory and all this stuff that obviously, you know, you look into this for 5 minutes and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, what you mentioned earlier with JFK getting the Treasury to print notes, he actually made an executive order 11110. And what that did, that allowed the Treasury Department to print Treasury notes backed by silver, which basically usurped the power of the Federal Reserve. So many people like to connect the JFK assassination with some people, some bad people within the Federal Reserve, because he basically removed the power from the Fed. And I'm not sure whether I believe that or not, because I also have heard other people argue that doing executive order 11110, even though it did back dollars by silver, it didn't really actually take any power away from the Fed. So, I mean, there's different ways to look at it. But either way, he did do executive order that allowed the Treasury, which is defined under the Constitution, to print its own money. I mean, Congress passes the bills, but the Treasury Department is supposed to print the currency to fund those bills, not the Federal Reserve.
Wow, great points. Okay, yeah, just going back to the chat real quick, people saying that he had silver backed, like you said, and Casey Rich says JFK wrote an article in Foreign Affairs supporting GATT and free trade. And so, yeah, the people are saying, yep, he was going after, you know, trying to back the dollar with silver, and that would have given him a lot of enemies.
See, and let's see here. Someone just commented. I don't know where it's at now. Sorry, whoever it was, but they said like they don't mind fiat currency, just the Federal Reserve, the way they're doing it, and I completely agree with that too. Like for instance, Abraham Lincoln instituted what's called the Greenback Law. Basically, in order to fund the Civil War, the American government was going to borrow money from either the French or the British governments. Well, Abraham Lincoln knew that if they did so, after the war's end, there would be a massive amount of debt for essentially, I mean, a long, long time with countries that they don't always agree with. So Abraham Lincoln allowed states to print their own currency, fiat currency, debt-free money to pay off the Civil War debt, and it worked. And we had no debt really after the Civil War because of that. So fiat currency, it can be actually used for good if you have somebody or a government or some type of department to actually make sure you're only printing debt-free money for what is needed and not trying to monetize foreign debt. Or the main issue with fiat currency is that it is used for war. I mean, if you're on the gold standard, you cannot actually go to war with all you want, because the only way the government to get money for wars is to borrow gold from the corporations. Well, now if we want to go to war, we ask the Federal Reserve, they print us money, we use that to fund and monetize any type of foreign invention we want to do. And that's why fiat currency is at its core dangerous, and no country in history has ever survived by using fiat currency as their economic modality. And Holly got kicked off. Ugh. Sorry, everyone. Let me send her another link on Twitter. I think her computer is acting up. I guess you got to hear me just ramble on. And she is back.
Sorry, guys.
Good timing. I was about to ramble on about my life and what year I was born and all that fun stuff.
Oh man, you're gonna do like 5 questions for Piper.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Russians did it. Well, actually, it's just we have like a huge storm right now outside, so maybe that had something to do with it. It's like hurricane. Yeah.
There's actually we're supposed to be getting a snowstorm here as well, and it's like 30-mile-an-hour winds right now. It's supposed to be worse tomorrow with snow.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's just raining really, really hard right now. So
Guess I'd rather have snow or rain than snow, unless it's cold. If it's cold and it's raining, screw that.
Yeah, it's not nice right now, but we basically didn't have any sort of rain for like the entire month or two. It's been super dry, so it's all right. It's happening now. Some of my friends have been going mushrooming because now it's like we're getting like the fall harvest now, which is like super late for us. So anyway.
Yeah.
So we got a good crew here, you guys. You guys are the hardcores, all the people here. I just want to bring up one last really weird thing, and I don't know, I wonder if this is actually connected to the JFK file release. Like, I hope the rest of the files get released. I mean, for only like 2,800 files to be released out of 30,000, I think because we have like crowdsourcing now and so many amazing researchers online, I think people will be able to really look over these records with a fine-tooth comb, and hopefully we can find some information, even though it's not the complete 30,000 records. I feel like it's somewhat of a good step for Trump that he released some of it. I mean, he could have blocked all of it. I don't know what it would take for him to release all of it, if it would be like an executive order or what he'd have to do. But I think it's really, really weird that George H.W. Bush is in the news for like assaulting women. Like, the guy's like 94 years old. And this is coming out like the same time that these JFK records are coming out. So I know they might not be completely related at all, but I have the theory that H.W. Bush's name would probably come up in the 30,000 records if they were to drop all of it.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly from my reading, basically what's going to happen is the issue of releasing the rest of the documents will be going on for the next 6 months. A committee is going to be reviewing them and redacting what they want redacted. And I think next April or next March, they're supposed to be completely released. So whether or not that indeed happens, it's open for speculation. If it does get released, those documents may be like 90% redacted anyway, so you probably won't get any new information from it. But the whole George H.W. Bush thing, I do find your comment kind of interesting, and I actually kind of agree with it. I mean, there is speculation, there is like theories, and even some evidence, circumstantial evidence, that George Bush was in Dallas at the time during the JFK assassination. We know for a fact that he lied about being in the CIA. He said he wasn't in the CIA during the JFK assassination, but documents actually prove that he was employed by the CIA during that time. So why would you lie about that? But then again, it is the CIA, so maybe everyone in the CIA just wants to keep their cover. I don't know, but either way, I don't like people like Robert Mueller, James Comey, George H.W. Bush. I mean, I don't trust them at all.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just think it's weird. It's like, people basically give him like the Bushes a pass, HW Bush like a pass for like the past 50 years. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh, this woman's like, oh, he grabbed my butt when he was in a wheelchair. Like, it's so weird, I'm like, why is anyone caring about this now?
Right. I mean, he was in the hospital, I think, a couple weeks ago. I mean, he's pretty much on death's doorstep. I think all the Bushes are. Well, no. Yeah.
There's a funny story about him. Like he basically like he lives like an hour south of where I live in Kennebunkport. And he basically owns like that entire town. Like it looks perfect. Like it looks like Disneyland. It's like for rich people. And so like the streets, everything's immaculate. There's flowers everywhere, and all the roads are paved and everything. Like it looks really nice down there. And the people tell the stories about him. Like he still drives like his giant yacht boat around. Like I don't know if he did this summer, but like he would drive his giant like yacht through Kennebunkport, and basically they would have like the what's the basically like people like sound the alarm, like the Coast Guard and stuff. They're like, get the hell out of the way, like Bush is coming, because he's so old and he's driving this huge boat. And they're just like, clear out, like basically the whole town. Like when he goes through, they're like, oh man, HW's up behind the wheel again. Everyone get out of the way. Like it's basically his playground in Kennebunkport.
Those crazy senior citizens.
Yeah.
I can see that.
We got that problem in Maine.
Yeah, they're everywhere. And, okay, I mean, this is kind of way off topic here, and I feel bad. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, all of us have grandparents. All of us are going to be senior citizens at one time. But I think there comes
if you're lucky.
Yeah, I think there comes a certain age where you should have to retake your driver's license. I mean, if you're, because you're not just putting yourself in danger, you're actually putting others in danger. I know a few times I drove. I have a motorcycle, so a lot of times I'm riding on my motorcycle and I see like a senior citizen who maybe looks very old, like in 90s. I'm kind of scared to pass him or her because for all I know, when they switch lanes, they don't check, their blind spot. And right there, I'm half dead, So I feel kind of bad saying that because that's almost kind of discrimination in a way. But I don't know, when you reach a certain age, I think you should have to either retake your test or just maybe, I don't know, get someone else to drive you.
Oh man, you got a motorcycle? You're so cool.
I know. I got a 2015 Indian Scout. I miss it because
nice.
It's in my home city, and I'm at my apartment now. And so when the days are nice, I can't just go in my garage and get on it. I got to go 3 hours away, which I just don't have time to do that. So
yeah, Indian motorcycles are awesome. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, being on a motorcycle is super exhilarating, but yeah, you have to really be so careful of the people around you. And yeah, I think you're right. In theory, people should take a driver's test again, just like mostly to make sure that you can still turn your neck, so you can like look in your blind spot, because people don't do that. They don't even bother to like turn and look for their blind spot, and that's how people die. The problem with that is that you could never get that passed. Like any politician that would propose that, like their voting base would be gone. Like older people are not going to support a driving test, and they're the people that vote. So and it's hard. They won't be able to leave the house or whatever if they lose their license, because we don't have public transportation anymore.
I actually, I was watching House MD. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. And House actually made a pretty funny comment. The world would be a lot safer if instead of airbags, you had machetes in your car. I mean, no one would ever drive drunk. No one would ever drive, like dangerously. They would drive slow and be careful. And I mean, obviously that's never going to happen, but I thought it was a funny comment.
I've known people that have needed to cut the seatbelt off to like save their life. Like people have like almost decapitated themselves on the seatbelt. So maybe a machete would help out too. I don't know.
Yeah. Mike Sama writes, I'm conservative libertarian. Well, I should say too that I am fiscally conservative, socially moderate. I mean, I'm a constitutionalist at heart, so it's kind of hard for me. I believe in less regulations, but I do believe in regulations on Wall Street and banking. I don't trust the banks at all, and I just figured I'd share that since he's one of my newest subscribers. So in case he was curious what I am,
Oh, Mike Samra.
yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome. He's a great commenter and has a lot of great thoughts on my channel. Yeah, it's interesting. I keep telling my subs to join your channel because I think a lot of them would like it. And yeah, as Mike says, a lot of my subs are libertarian, which is kind of funny. So that's just how it goes, you guys. So
Well, I think for the most part too, I mean, like my subscribers, your subscribers, I mean, Hard Bastard, just everyone sticks. I think for the most part, despite where our political proclivities lie, we can all agree on one thing. I mean, that the media is corrupt. And not only that, the establishment, whether the Republican or Democrat establishment, are actually threats to America. And I think we can actually all find unity to some degree in that notion that we want what's best for everyone. We want to get out of the establishment control that they are basically putting upon us.
because BB just says like I like common sense stuff. So
That's yeah. And most people don't even you know agree with that. I mean, they want no, yeah, exactly. What should be common sense seems like it isn't common sense almost.
Christian Holt says Greens and Libertarians should create a coalition. Yes, I mean, I think in so many ways, like anyone who's third party or independent at this point, which is the majority of Americans, don't like the two major parties. If we form together, that would be like the scariest thing for the establishment, you know, for Washington, D.C., for everyone in office. You know, the two main parties have run our country for over 150 years now, you guys. So pretty much their worst nightmare is that we all start working together on common interests. And I think that's why people were so mad when, you know, I've started to, you know, I tried to speak at a it was like a denounce political violence rally event with a bunch of libertarians and Greens. And we were all told that, you know, all the libertarians are racist or they're alt-right. Like they were calling everyone alt-right. And basically it was a tactic of these democratic organizations to try to break apart all the common sense people that are left, you know, which is actually the majority of people in America, in my opinion. You know, that's their worst nightmare, is that people start to come together on common sense issues. And also there's the author who I don't remember her name right now, but she wrote an article saying that, you know, the right and the left, all of us alternative news people should come together against, you know, the war budget. Like someone just posted up there, like, you know, most of our taxes go to the war budget, and both sides, you know, for whatever reason, we have our own reasons why, but we shouldn't be spending that much money on that. You know, we should be at least reinvesting it in different ways. And that's basically their worst nightmare, is for us to come together.
You know, and that's why I'm a constitutionalist at heart, because the founding fathers, I mean, this wasn't in the Constitution, but they never wanted political parties to rule. They didn't believe in political parties. They wanted basically whomever was best for the country. But it seems like, though, political parties were enacted over time, and now only two major political parties like control everything. And that's why someone like Bernie Sanders, who is not a Democrat, ran under the Democratic Party, and someone like Ron Paul, who is not really a Republican, ran under the Republican Party. Likewise, Rand Paul, he's more of a libertarian than Republican. He ran a Republican Party because it seems like third parties are just ignored. Third parties are looked upon as jokes, like Gary Johnson, but Gary Johnson actually is a joke, so I won't get into that. But I think we have to get rid of that social stigma, or that stigma that only two parties control this country. We have to get rid of that notion and try to give more power, or give the ability for other parties to achieve more power by, I guess, promoting them more. Like they ignore third parties and they promote the Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment. That's it. They have to, but I mean, that's the media. So basically to get third parties up and running, people have to stop listening to the media and start promoting third party candidates and independents and things of that nature.
So Garden Gnome says, a few of us do a live chat several times a week, and we'd be happy to have you on as a guest. Let me know if you're interested. You should get on that, Piper.
Oh my God. Do you pay me, Garden Gnome? How much do you pay for that?
Yeah, I know you're a busy guy, Wes.
Yeah, right. We'll have to see what happens. I'm actually, I don't know, I guess like I said, I'm not sure how many are subscribers to me on this chat or they're here to see you, but I'll probably be gone this week and I have another poker tournament to go to, so I probably won't be doing much many videos this weekend.
What? Poker tournament?
Oh yeah, I play a lot.
What?
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
I love it. I could sit here and tell you all the odds on getting hands and the outs and all that stuff, but I won't do it.
You should do a video on that.
There's actually a video I did, poker chip tricks. Actually, I always have poker chips with me, and I know it's like a habit now. Like, yeah, I can shuffle all that stuff. I love it.
Were you going to Vegas?
No, that's in March. I go in March every year to Vegas. So this, I won't say where, but it's in state.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, you don't have to say. I'm interested. How do you get involved with that?
Oh, I played since I was in high school, but then recently, a couple years ago, I started playing for, not really semi-professionally. That kind of sounds presumptuous of me, but I mean, I do win more often. I do all right, so I'll just say that. So a couple years ago.
When I used to have a TV, like when I lived with my folks and stuff, I used to like to watch the poker tournaments on TV.
Oh yeah. Dan O'Neill writes craps, and actually I play craps when I go to Vegas in March, and craps are actually your best odds to win. And so if you ever want to win money in Vegas, I play craps. That's your best odds. It's kind of hard to figure out, but once you get it though, you can win quite a lot.
That's cool. Yeah, my dad's family goes to Vegas like all the time. They love it.
Oh, yeah.
They're from Chicago, so it's like their tropical adventure going. They just lose money. They just hemorrhage money. They don't actually go there to win anything.
Are there any casinos in Maine, like big ones?
We have the Oxford Casino. We have a big one in Bangor. That opened up a few years ago, and there's actually a ballot question to open up another casino in York County in southern Maine, and that'll probably pass. So we've got a few casinos in Maine now. The Bangor one's the biggest one, and then there's big ones in Connecticut and Mass. So yeah, it's growing in Maine for sure. People really like it. I hope their buffet will improve, but
yeah, right. You always want to have that.
Nice.
But I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's it tonight, buddy. Thanks.
All right. Well, it's been fun. Thank you everyone in the chat for coming on. So next time we do this, it will probably be on Holly's channel, and it'll probably be next week sometime if you want again, Holly.
Yeah, if you're not busy. Being a big spender and high roller, we'll do this, right?
I wish.
Great.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for.
Good night, guys. See you soon. Bye.